Grandad, who was a notorious fibber. He used to tell us fibs. We never knew if he was telling stories or not. But after my nana died,
The old block, then.
in a different way, I
You
think.
put them to a different use.
Well, after my nana died, Grandad Burnett suddenly took up baking. Pies and scones and cakes mostly. I've always been good at cooking, said Grandad, and I just never did it very often when your nan was alive. I didn't want to show her up, you see. His apple pies were just the most delicious in the whole world. You can never eat a single piece, one taste, and you wanted more and more. Oh, I taught that Gordon Ramsay a thing or two about pastry, said my Grandad. I beat him in an apple pie making competition once. You should have heard him swear. Oh, I had to cover your nana's ears. Grandad was always saying these kind of things. You can never be sure if he was telling the truth. Like the time he told me he was an extra in the film Gladiator. Oh yeah, I was one of the barbarian horde from Germania, he said. The one with the big bushy beard on the left. My teachers sometimes used to say, did your Grandad Burnett tell you that? When I put my hand up to answer a question. Like once he said, I saw a man eating fish at Bridlington. It was in a newspaper, he said. Honest. And then there was the time he said to my sister that he would play her for £1 at drafts. When she won, he held out his hand for the money. But I won, said my sister. You owe me it. Who said anything about winning, he said. I said I'd play you for £1. It's my appearance money. For years, I believed my Grandad Burnett was born on the 32nd of May, which, he said, it only came around every 20 odd years, and that meant he was really only 4, a lot younger than me. You know, if you say the word ginger over and over again really quickly, he said to me, it sounds like gullible. Ginger, 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 ginger. No, it doesn't, I said. Ginger, ginger. Grandad once said to me is that his cap blew off on Holderness Road, and Neil Armstrong, the astronaut, found it on the moon. Oh, he said. When he came back to Earth, he brought it round to our house in Mersey Street. I said, oh, that's impossible, I don't believe that. Why, he said, I always write my name and address in my caps, just in case. He's got an answer for everything, my Grandad. But I think he misses my nana. Oh no, I speak to her every night, said Grandad. I put my hands together like this and I talk to her. She says she misses you a lot. It's really nice up there, even though there's no bingo. She's having a good rest and that she's not poorly at all now. I don't know whether to believe him or not, but I love him, just like I love my nana. And his apple pies are really nice, really, really nice.
Very good.
Roll up, can I have a story?
You're going, please.
Really fast. If you told him to whisper, he'd shout. He was always being cheeky and larking around. He was rotten and mean and unkind. As you'd guess, he had hardly a friend in the world, but believe me, he just didn't mind. One day, he woke up with a thought in his head that was extra especially bad. He was in a foul mood, had a spot on his nose, and was generally feeling mad. What I need, snarled the boy, with a sneer on his lips, is a way to spoil everyone's fun. It shouldn't be hard for a rotter like me. I'm certain that it can be done. Danny thought for a while. Then he thought a bit more. Then he suddenly hit on a plan. He needed a colleague, a partner in crime, and he knew how to find just the man. So he opened his laptop and typed in one word. It said wizard, and that was a lot. Next, he scrolled down the screen with a shiver of glee as he Googled to see what he'd got. There were fat wizards, thin wizards, kind wizards too, and even a wizardy school. But Danny knew none of these goodies could help, for Danny was nobody's fool. Then just as his head was beginning to spin, a grotty old ad caught his eye. Nasty wizard is offering 2 spells for 1. Don't miss out. If you're mean, please apply. Danny wasted no time in getting in touch with the wizard by old-fashioned letter. Give me some of your spells. You have to, you must. If they're grisly and grim, all the better. Soon, a parcel arrived with 2 bottles inside. One was blue and the other was red. And each had a label so carefully scribed. And here is what each of them said. First, potion for making your headmaster twitch like his undies are full of live bees. And second, a mixture for making Gran's feet smell like dreadful, revolting French cheese. Danny used both, of course, and he laughed and he laughed. And then he sent off for some more. Spells for boils and for bogies, for mishaps and mess, all came winging their way to his door. Children barked, bottoms sparked, noses grew, teachers flew. There was mayhem and madness galore. But it wasn't enough for young Danny McFry, 'cause that bad-tempered boy wanted more. The wizard sent mountains of spells out to Dan, and of course he made truckloads of money. But as mean as he was, and as greedy and gross, he began to think, this isn't funny. I thought I was bad, but this boy is a toad, a really despicable rat. I'll show him a thing about rotten old spells. We'll see what he thinks about that. So, he cooked up a potion of frog's legs and fleas with a very light dusting of mice. Then he jarred it and printed a label to stick. It said, "Mixture for making boys nice." Next, he sneaked into town and slipped into Dan's room. There he poured out a glass of cold pop. It had lemon and bubbles and sugar below, with a layer of green magic on top. When he found it, of course, Danny wolfed it straight down in a way that was fit for a pig. Then in less than a minute, he started to grin, with a smile that was stupidly big. "What on earth?" cried the boy as he looked at his face and saw his reflection's white teeth. "This is a disaster. I can't live like this when I'm such a mean rotter beneath." But worse was to come. When he opened his mouth, he said, "Please," and then "thank you" as well. "Unpleasant," he groaned with a shake of his head. "Oh, that wizard has cast a cruel spell." These days, Danny smiles, shakes hands and is good, and all his mean tricks are forgotten. But do spells wear off? I really don't know. And are rotten boys always rotten? If you see him about, better take a close look, 'cause you might see a glint in his eye, a sliver of meanness just waiting to pop from the boy they call Danny McFry. Thank you for listening.
Joseph, right. Hello, my name's Steve. I'm here with Joseph and Poppy, who are going to hear a story about a beetle that used to live in my garden. When I was a little boy, a little bit bigger than these two, I used to live in our house with my brother and sister. And we didn't really have a garden. We had, my mum and dad called it a garden, but we had a backyard. But in the corner of the backyard was a little bit of flower bed and some soil. And so we used to go and play out there. And we used to play with all the little insects and ants that lived in the garden. And we used to play with them in the garden, but because we used to miss them when we went in the house, we decided that maybe it would be a good idea to take them inside the house with us. So my sister had an old biscuit tin, and she used to pick up ants and put them in the biscuit tin and take them into the house. And I picked up a beetle, and I didn't need a big biscuit tin for a beetle, so I had a matchbox. So I threw all the matches away and I put the beetle in the matchbox, and I kept him in my bedroom, and I used to take him out and I used to put him on a wooden tray, and it had big steep sides, the wooden tray, so that the beetle could run about on the tray and not fall off, and I could keep him there in my bedroom. But one day I came back in from school and I went to get the beetle out, and I opened the matchbox and there was no beetle in the matchbox. So I was quite upset, and
I went to see my mum. And I said, Mum, my beetle's gone. And not that I told her that I was keeping a beetle in my bedroom, of course, because that wasn't really going to be allowed. And she said, ah, yes. And I could see that my mum was a bit upset as well. And she said, I went to get some matches to start the fire. And I opened the matchbox, and that beetle jumped out and ran away. And so I thought, oh dear. And she said, I think he's got back in the garden. So we went out in the garden and we hunted around for ages, and we started to try to make noises like a beetle would. Do you know what sort of noises a beetle makes? It just goes screech, 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 screech. But very, very quietly. You have to have your ears right close to the ground in order to be able to hear the beetles. And so, luckily, just as it was getting dark, the beetle appeared. I said, he's there, he's there. And we managed to grab him and put him in the box. We put him back in the matchbox. And as I did this and took him indoors, my mum got a big black pen and she wrote beetle on the matchbox so that we would never mistake him again for the matches. Now, when I got older, I heard somebody sing a song about just the same situation. And this was a singer called Melanie, and she called this song Alexander Beetle. And I thought, that's just like the beetle I used to look after. So I learnt the song. And I thought, when I'm telling stories in Hull, I'll tell my story, and then maybe I'll tell the story in the song as well. So I thought, I must get the words of the song absolutely right. So I went on the internet to find the words to the song. And I discovered that Melanie had not written the song herself. What she had done, she had taken a poem by a famous poet. We've got a famous poet here, stood here, Richard. But this was an even more famous poet called A.A. Milne, who's best known for writing Winnie the Pooh. And he wrote a poem, and he called it Forgiven. And just to finish, I'll read you this poem about his beetle. And he called his beetle Alexander, just like Melanie did in her song. So here is the poem. I found a little beetle, so that Beetle was his name, and I called him Alexander, and he answered just the same. I put him in a matchbox, and I kept him all the day. And Nanny let my beetle out. Yes, Nanny let my beetle out. She went and let my beetle out, and Beetle ran away. She said she didn't mean it, and I never said she did. She said she wanted matches, and she just took off the lid. She said that she was sorry, but it's difficult to catch an excited sort of beetle you've mistaken for a match. She said that she was sorry, and I really mustn't mind, as there's lots of beetles she was certain we could find. If we looked about the gardens for the holes where beetles hid, we'd get another matchbox and write Beetle on the lid. We went to all the places which a beetle might be near, and we made the sorts of noises which a beetle likes to hear. And I saw a kind of something, and I gave a little shout. A beetle house! An Alexander Beetle coming out! It was Alexander Beetle, as certain as I can be, and he had a sort of look as if he thought it might be me. He had a sort of look as if he thought he ought to say, I'm very, very sorry that I tried to run away. And Nanny's very sorry too, for you know what she did? She's writing Alexander very blackly on the lid. So Nan and me are friends, because it's difficult to catch an excited Alexander you've mistaken for a match. Thank you for listening.
Right. This is my latest poem. It was written because I went to the Withensea Residence Gala last week and all the little girls were asking me for a poem about a pony. Oh, and here's two little girls just walking in now. This is what I've written as a result of the request. Hello Sophie, we've seen you before. Have you come back to see me? This is the Shire horse and the ponies, and I'm told that it's my empowerment poem. The Shire horse was huge, pulled big carts, and before she came to the farm, worked for a brewery and pulled a dray. But all she wanted to be was a little pony. She wanted to play with the ponies and be sweet and loved. This was not to be, and this made her sad. So she laboured by day, and by night slept in the barn surrounded by big bays of hay. She could hear the ponies whinny as they played in the open air. And the little girls laughed and rode and loved them. Martha, they'd say, get out of the way while we play. This made her sad, so very sad. One night the ponies were put to bed inside the barn, locked in for safety, and Martha was led to her hay and locked in too, all alone and oh so sad. She heard loud noises and saw someone had broken into the barn. She neighed and whinnied in alarm and saw a bright light as vandals lit the hay. It flared up. The ponies woke and panicked and screamed. There was no help for them as they scrambled about to keep away from the flames which came nearer and nearer. Martha realised that she was big, she was strong, and she could kick. She kicked the wood of the side of the barn and made a hole and got herself out, saved herself. Then she cantered around to where the ponies were and used her rear legs to kick the barn and make a hole and save the day and save the ponies. And she was the heroine of the day and saved them all. Never after that ever did the ponies scorn her so. Never would they let her go without a hello. They loved her so, and that made her happy. So lucky for Martha that she was big and not a sweet little pony. Thank you. This is a poem that I wrote probably because I watched too many Antique Roadshow type programmes. And it's just a whimsical little one, and it's called Reflections of a Georgian Doll. So you have to use your imagination. Imagine me as a very lovely, very beautiful doll. I was loved. I truly was. I know I was. I was adored, played with so gently, treated so very carefully. I have long hair that can be dressed. With beauty I am blessed. I have a gorgeous panelled dress. I'm always so neat, never a mess. Once my girl had gone to bed, I was placed on a shelf and heard stories read. Tales of the king, the German George, and of his marriage to his cousin Sophia, so flawed. I heard of wars, I heard of affairs of love. I heard piano playing sweet enough to be the cooing of a dove. I am clothed in silk and lace and have bisque for my hands, feet and face. Throughout the years my girls had their own girls. I had even more love and care unfurled. I always heard the news. Napoleon did his war-roo. Jane Austen wrote such romantic books. Charles Dickens wrote about villainous crooks. Wordsworth, Shelley and Byron came to my ears. Slavery was abolished, ending so many fears. Victoria ruled an empire so vast, I understood it would forevermore last. I heard of the trenches of the Great War and saw soldiers returning crippled and sore. Then suddenly my world went black. I stood silently wondering when my life would come back. One day I was discovered in a loft so dark and was held so gently so as not to leave a mark. I was placed in a special case with glass to the front so you could see my face. I was taken to a museum so fine, and now the glory of display is mine. Talk about my age and value seems to be the rage, but as I stand and watch the crowds go by, I wish that to one of my little girls I could fly with their ringlets and posies so full of grace. Now the girls seem to have metal piercing in their face. The sweeping gowns have gone away and jeans and miniskirts have had their way. No one seems now to be bright and fresh, and from here I can see far too much flesh. Oh, I long for an evening in my home, and to a museum I would never roam. The harpsichord and the pianoforte seem so much gentler than the music today. Please, Lord, let me have one more caress. I'd do anything to return to one of my girls, I do confess.
Story, but I'm going to tell you it because it's nice and short and you look like busy women, okay? And it's about a holiday that I had around about 20 years ago. In fact, yes, it probably would have been about that. It was in Wales. It was Cam House, and it was in mid-Wales, and there was nothing around it. But it was absolutely one of the best holidays I've ever had in lots of ways. My children were quite young. The oldest was about 8. The youngest was it's been about 3, one in the middle. And I went with my sister, my partner, my sister, her partner. And we all went down to, we'd hired a house. When we got there, it was a Queen Anne farmhouse. Smallish and very tatty, which was perfect. Because when you hire cottages and you've got little kids, the other kids were sort of 9 and 7, and you're forever saying, don't touch this off. Get off that ornament. And this, it was a working farm, but the house itself had obviously been a gentleman farmer's residence, sort of like out of Mansfield Park or somewhere. And the family still lived in it in the winter, but left in the summer. They went and lived up in living caravans, did something to the sheep or something, I don't know, or looked after the cows. And so this house had everything you needed. It had beds, it was beautiful, but everything was tatty. The carpets were worn, there was nothing you could spoil. Anything of value had been put in the kitchen downstairs and had been locked up. The back door into what was like a basement kitchen was locked, so you couldn't get out into some kind of yard, I imagine. We never knew what was there. But you had everything you needed. The doorway was beautiful, with a shell over the top, and went into a hall. Again, really tatty. The staircase up to the bedrooms, all on quite a small scale. But it was perfect for us. And the children just rampaged about, basically, in this acre of land, which had a woodland. And it even had a tunnel through to an old ice house, where they stored the ice. And upstairs, which had been the servants' quarters, had been converted into a flat. And an elderly man and his wife lived there, and they were an uncle and an aunt of the farmers. And he was had been a major. And the kids adored him, and he really liked children. So I was greeted to coming out, Mum, come and see. Come to the front door with coffee in my hand to see all the children in an army jeep. And my 3-year-old, the boys driving, and my 3-year-old carrying a hopefully decommissioned shotgun. But it was a brilliant time. Occasionally we popped out for a walk or drove to the seaside, but that was it. And we stayed there we were there for a fortnight. Into the second week, the children had gone to bed, we were having a coffee, and we weren't, we were having a glass of wine, and I said, shall I go down and make some coffee? Walked down into the basement kitchen, got the cups, put the kettle on, filled it, made the coffee, 4 cups, and I heard somebody come in behind me and turned to give them the coffee. And I just had time to register that there was nobody there to give the coffee to, when there was a whoosh and a door banged. Now, no door could bang in that kitchen because all the doors were locked. And it took me very little time to think, I'm telling nobody about this, because I wanted to sleep at night and I didn't want 3 children in bed with me as well as my partner. So I didn't say anything. But there was, it wasn't as if I thought, there might be somebody there. There was just somebody there. So I went upstairs, took the coffee up, we had the coffee. A few nights later, my partner said, I'll go down and make some coffee, shall I? And I said, nothing. I thought, I'm not going to tell him. So he went downstairs, made the coffee, and I said, and when he came up, his face was absolutely ashen. And I still didn't say anything, because I thought, we're having a nice time here, and I'm enjoying this, and perhaps whatever it was, needed a cup of coffee, I don't know. And in the car going home, I was driving, and I turned to Tennille and I said, you heard the ghost downstairs, didn't you? And he looked at me and said, well, yeah, I didn't hear anything, but there was something behind me and it felt really cold. I said, oh, it didn't feel really cold, but the door banged. Oh, right. And the funny thing is, I've often thought, because I do tell stories, that I could work this up into a story and really make something of it. But it defies me every time, because I don't believe in ghosts, but that is all true. That's it, that is true. What a cheetah is? Do you know what a cheetah is? Tell me.
Like if you're playing a game
Carry on.
and you try to win,
Uh-huh. Carry on.
and the person wins by cheating.
Oh, I see. Do you know that's spelt differently from my cheetah? Do you know of a different cheetah? Cheetah. This is my cheetah. And it doesn't cheat. You know what cheetah is, don't you? Tell them what cheetah is. Because they think it's somebody who cheats at games, but that's EA in the middle. It sounds the same. I think it's so hard to spell. But it's an animal. It's that animal. And what's special about a cheetah? Come on, girl. Answer me now, please. Full marks. Do you remember? Can you remember? It can run. It can run very, very fast. It's the fastest. I've only got one picture of its head, but it's actually like a big cat. Beautiful animals.
Actually, I'm faster than him.
Yeah, for 60 miles an hour? Yeah, right. In your dreams. No, but I'm sure you do run very fast. Anyway, that's cheetah, and that cheetah is spelt CHEETAH, I think. Anyway, we've frightened that lady off. So, cheetah didn't always run very fast. In fact, what you're doing there is brilliant, because that is exactly what cheetah did. Cheetah lived in the forest, and this cheetah was a girl, but we know this is a boy. Cheetah just used to lounge around. That's all cheetah did. Lie under the tree, just to stretch and yawn, and in the sunshine just have a little snooze. And the other thing cheetah used to do, cheetah didn't have any spots then. My picture of the cheetah I put away, it's got spots like a leopard, yes? Cheetah didn't have any spots. Cheetah just had beautiful golden fur, like your hair. And cheetah used to lounge around, and cheetah occasionally used to get up and just groom herself so that she was very lovely. And the animals used to drive the animals mad. The animals really liked cheetah. There was no harm in her, but she was so lazy, so lazy. And the monkeys used to come down and say, oh, come on, cheetah, come and swing through the trees with us. We can have a great time. We can play games. We can run around. And cheetah used to say, oh, I don't think so. I don't need to do anything. I'm just so gorgeous. And the monkeys used to say, oh, you're no fun, Cheetah. And they'd swing off through the trees and have a bit of good time. Cheetah lay just like that. Elephant used to come along and say, Cheetah, it's time that you did something. You're an intelligent animal and you've got lovely long legs and I bet you could do something with them. All you do is lie around. Now, it's not good enough. Don't talk to me like that, said Elephant. And Cheetah used to say, can you show us what she used to do? She used to say, I don't need to do anything. I'm so, do you remember the word? Gorgeous. All the animals absolutely fed up with Cheetah. One day, something happened in the forest. One day, when the animals woke up, there was a strange smell in the air. Something the smell that when they breathed it in, it caught the back of their throats. It wasn't nice, it made them cough. When they looked into the distance, they could see a big grey cloud. Now the animals had never seen fire, but in a forest, you could imagine fire is very, very dangerous. The smell got stronger, the clouds seemed to be getting nearer, which is the grey cloud of smoke. And the birds from the far part of the forest started flying across, flying towards the lake at the end of the forest, saying, run animals, run! The fire is coming, the fire is really dangerous, get to the lake, you will be safe. And the animals thought, well, we don't know, well, no, we'll leave it a bit, we'll see what this is, we don't know what they're on about. But they brought their little ones together with the parents to sort of said, you stay close till we find out what's happening here. Meanwhile, the fire got closer and closer, and all the insects from the other part of the forest started scuttling through and saying, run animals, you really have to go. Fire is getting closer, this is dangerous, get to the lake, you will be safe. And soon they could hear the crackling of the noise that the fire was making as the flames began to lick the branches and the leaves of the trees and start to burn them up, and the smell got stronger and stronger, and all the animals began to run. The animals ran, and they ran across to the edge of the lake, and they waited, and then they started, everybody, imagine your mum and dad would be saying, oh yeah, right, he's here, that's fine, yeah, she's over there, it's all right, don't need to worry, and checking that everybody was safe. Then they thought somebody was missing. Who do you think might have been missing? Who was asleep under the tree? Because you're far too lazy. Cheetah was just saying, it will be nothing. Don't be silly. All this running around, bothering yourselves. Oh, I'm just going to have a little snooze. I'm so gorgeous. I don't need to do anything. So Cheetah had stayed behind underneath the tree. And a fire got closer and closer and closer. And Cheetah thought, I don't smell very nice, but I think I can have another 5 minutes. The animals at the end of the lake, they sent the eagle up, the eagle that can fly as high than any bird, to look down and say, can you see Cheetah? The eagle came back and said, she's still asleep. She's under, I can see her under the tree, and the fire is beginning to reach the tree that she is under. We've got to wake her up. So they all shouted, Cheetah, wake up and run! Nothing. You've got to shout. Can you help, please? Because we're going to need you to be in this story. Come on, get up, get up, get up, get up. And they shouted, get up. They shouted, 1, 2, 3, wake up, Cheetah, run. Right, 1, 2, 3, wake up. Cheetah, run! And Cheetah woke up, and the fire was just catching the branches above his head, and she ran and she ran and she ran and she ran and she ran, she ran and she ran and she ran and she ran, and the fire was going after her, and the burning, the leaves of the trees were dropping on her fur, and it was charring her fur, and the one even caught her tail as she ran, and all the animals were watching, saying, "To the lake, cheetah! Come to the lake! Get in the lake! Get in the lake, cheetah! Get in the lake!" Oh, splash! Oh, well, Cheetah got to the lake. Cheetah got to the lake. Let's have a look at her. And she came out of the water. And she shook herself. And all the animals looked at her and went, "Oh, Cheetah." And Cheetah said, "What? What's the matter?"
What?
You say it, "What's the matter?"
I feel like that.
And Cheetah went and looked at herself in the water. And do you know, where Cheetah had just had lovely blonde hair, lovely golden hair like that and like that, where the fire and where the branches had dropped on Cheetah's fur, she was covered in spots. And that is how Cheetah got her spots. And also how she learned that she could run very fast indeed, and luckily for her that she could swim. And that's the end of my story. And thank you very much for taking part in it.
Right, when you're ready.
You know the river at the back of the museum, it's the River Hull, it's what the town's named after, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you know it's not always been there? People think it's always been there, it's a river. But no, it wasn't. Long time ago, this was all marshes around here. There were no rivers or anything, it was just marshes. And all that lived here was just little animals and tweety birds and hardly any humans. And the other thing that lived here were boggarts. Do you know boggarts?
I've heard of boggarts.
You've heard of boggarts? They're not nice, they're big, they're tall. They're about as big as that statue, they're about 10 foot tall. As high as William Wilberforce. They're hairy, they have green heads that spin around and this kind of green juice spurts out all the time. They're not nice, you wouldn't want to meet them. Anyway, they lived here a long time ago, until some humans started moving in. And one day there was a young farmer who took over a farm up near Driffield. You know Driffield?
Yeah.
Up the road. Well, he was a new tenant farmer, so he was paying rent on this land to the local lord. And on his first day, he went out, walking down the lane to his farm, feeling pretty good about himself with his spade and all the other stuff that farmers have. And in the lane, there was a boggart. And the boggart says to him, "Where you going?" He said, "Going to my farm, I've just started renting it." Boggart says, "This is my land, get off." Farmer says, No, I've just started, I've paid me rent to the landlord, I can't get off." Boggart says, "This is my land, get off." So the farmer thought, you obviously can't argue with boggarts. They're very tall, very scary. You're not going to negotiate with them. So he thinks about it and he says, "Can we do a deal?" He says, "Look, I'll do all the work, I'll do all the farming, and at the end of the year when the harvest is ready, you can have half of it, okay?" So boggarts are quite lazy, so the boggart thought about this and he said, "Okay, that sounds all right. You do all the work, I get half of the produce, fine." The farmer says, "Yeah, before you go, you need to agree, do you want the produce that grows above the ground or the stuff that grows below the ground?" So the boggart thinks and he says, "I'll have everything that grows above the ground." So, okay, fine. The boggart goes away and he comes back at harvest time and he finds that the farmer has planted potatoes that year. So the farmer harvests his potatoes from below the ground and what's left on top are the green potato tops. Now, as you all know, potato tops are poisonous to humans. Well, they're not quite poisonous to boggarts because boggarts can eat a lot of things. But they're not nice either, and let's just say the boggart had an unpleasant few days. And he went back to the farmer and he said, I wasn't happy about that. Next time, I want everything that grows below the ground. The farmer says, all right. And that year, the farmer plants apple trees. And at the end of the year, the boggart comes back at harvest time, and the farmer's harvested all of his apples from above the ground, and the boggart gets the roots. Well, roots are not as poisonous as potato tops, but let's be honest, they're not very nice. They're not as nice as apples. So the boggart chooses roots, and he says, I think I want something better than this. He says, next time I come back, I'm just going to have half of everything. We'll split everything 50-50, all right? The farmer says, well, all right then. Boggart goes away and the farmer thinks about it, and he says, this is going to be a bit more difficult. So he says, right, this year I'm going to plant wheat. He goes and gets some seed and plants wheat in the field. And then he goes away and he buys some iron bars. And when the wheat gets to about knee high, he goes through half of the field and he bangs the iron bars in between the wheat stalks. And then the wheat grows a bit more and a bit more until the iron bars are completely hidden. Come harvest time, the boggart comes back for his half, and the farmer says to him, hello Mr. Boggart, I've got two scythes here. This is mine. The better one is for you. That's bigger and better and sharper, and that's your scythe because you're bigger and better than me. So the boggart watches him, and the farmer starts scything away through the corn, through the wheat, and picking up his bundles and putting them on the cart, and the boggart thinks, well, that looks easy enough. At last, farming can work. So he picks up his scythe and he swings it through the wheat, and it crashes against the iron bars, and it gets bent, and he gets angry, and he hits it even harder, and it hits the iron bars again, and it gets cracked, and he whacks it again, and it gets twisted and bent, and the boggart was so angry that he picked up, because boggarts are strong, he picked up the scythe, and he threw it all the way from Driffield. The scythe cut a ditch all the way down to the Humber, and the marshes drained into the ditch, and it became the River Hull, and the fields around dried out and became more farms, and that is how the River Hull was created.